All right, so let's talk about DMR. So what I'm going to do is show you how to use a $40 off-the-shelf Android phone that you can get at Best Buy and do DMR on it. So to prove to you that it works, let's see if this actually works. So and I'll get into this in a second here, but you just run a little app called DroidStar. And after you configure it with your, information and whatnot, you can connect. And it connects to whatever. So DMR. All right. Everybody got that? Ready to move on? No, just move on. So it does work though. But rather than trying to show you how to do it on this itty bitty little phone, I did screenshots and stuff instead. All right, moving around. So I'm going to talk about a quick history of mobile digital radio. That's going to be really fast. Few concepts and terms which tend to confuse folks, which really aren't that bad once you have them explained to you. Various ways to access DMR. Then we're going to talk about DMR the easy way, which is what I'm talking about here. Talk about phone requirements in order to make it work, how to download and install DroidStar, which is that app I was talking about, and then other modes that you can do with it. And again, all these, believe it or not, are created with AI.
Yeah, what's your meter reading there? 8,900 volts?
Yeah. Those are gigawatts. Yeah. Okay, a brief history of mobile digital radio. Okay, so let's start with a quiz. What was the first amateur radio digital mode? Say what? Diesel.
Morse code.
Morse code.
Still.
Digits, get it? All right. Okay. 1980s, VHF packet radio came out. It's still around. I know Denver Radio Club still has a packet radio repeater running. That was, obviously required a lot of equipment like a TNC. That's what this image is showing down here. D-Star was the first actual kind of mobile handheld, if you will, protocol, like was invented by the Japan Radio League and picked up by ICOM, and really didn't get into wide acceptance for 15 or 20 years after that. 2010 was the first amateur radio DMR radio that was launched by Connect Systems and Titera, which is also known as TYT. And that started really gaining steam around 2013, 2014. 2013, you used System Fusion, also known as YSF, C4FM, and or Wires X, if that wasn't confusing enough, hit the market. And then there's a new protocol that launched around 2020 and still not widely used because there really aren't any repeaters and very few radios yet. But M17 is the first protocol that was designed exclusively for amateur radio. And that's kind of cool, right? The other ones are all kind of adapted or created by the vendors themselves. And so they're all proprietary, closed source and all that. M17 is completely open source and designed by hams. Okay, a couple concepts. So DMR was originally developed by ETSI, and don't ask me what that stands for, but that's who developed it in 2005. It was originally designed for commercial and professional use. Primarily, it's still in heavy use by law enforcement, fire, rescue, that kind of stuff. And it was adopted by the amateur radio community beginning in 2010 to 2011. Again, it was probably another 5 or 6 years before it really began to take off in amateur radio. Now, one of the issues with DMR is just that. It was designed for other use, right? It was designed for commercial use and then adapted. And so it gets kind of confusing because of some of the things you have to do to make it to work, but it's not too bad. A couple of technical features. It uses TDMA, time domain multiple access, which basically gives you 2 channels on a single 12.5 kilohertz frequency. And in DMR lingo, those are called time slots. So remember that. So there's 2 time slots, 1 and 2. And it supports VHF, UHF, voice, and data. Although you do have to use up both time slots if you want to do those simultaneously. You also will rarely find a repeater that's supporting both. It's almost always just voice. Advantages of DMR are very efficient. Obviously, it doubles your channel capacity. So like you can run 2 voice channels simultaneously on that single 12.5 kilohertz slot, or frequency, I should say, bandwidth. Battery life is good because the transmitter is only active half the time that it would normally be if you were doing, say, FM. Improved audio quality, it's typical digital. It sounds a little tinny, but it's pretty good. It's very good quality. And that quality stays even when you get into weak signals. It's kind of one of those things where it either works or it doesn't. There's very little in between. And the equipment's very affordable, obviously. You can do it through a phone, you can do it through, a radio. The cheapest radios start around $60, I think. Or it's probably about 75 now. My first DMR radio was that Baofeng DM1701, which they still sell. All right, so DMR and amateur radio. Some of the features. So behind DMR, so DMR is the actual kind of technology, that we use between the radio and the back end, right? So you got the radio, and then it goes through a repeater or a hotspot to the internet. And then on the back end, you've got networks which connect all the radios together. And there's several. Brandmeister is the number one, the biggest one. I think it was the first as well. Brandmeister, which I will talk about in a minute here, has hundreds, thousands probably of talk groups. Think of a talk group as like a channel, right? So like, for example, our club has a talk group, and that's what we use for our TechNet every Tuesday. There's others though. There's TGIF. TGIF is a US-based, Brandmeister I think started in the UK. TGIF is US-based, very similar, lots of different channels, things like that. Tends to be, in my opinion, a little bit more of a good old boy network, because it's like a lot of folks from the US and not from Europe, so not quite as proper. Another one called DMR Mark, which I actually haven't done much with. And there's a ton of regional ones too. Like here in the Colorado region, we've got Rocky Mountain Ham, RM Ham. You've probably seen them at the swap meets and things. And they have a statewide proprietary or closed DMR network. So in other words, if you connect to their repeaters, you're using DMR, but you can only talk to people within their group. So they're not connected out to Brandmeister and other networks. All right, so I talked about talk groups already. Those allow organized conversations. You can link repeaters. So that's like what RMHAM does. So these repeaters are all linked together. And so if you, like, for example, connect to an RMHAM repeater over talk group 700, that's their statewide. Every repeater in the state lights up, right? So you can talk to anybody in the state on that one. They also have regional ones. So like they have one for the Front Range and Northern Colorado, Southern Colorado, and so on. Hotspot compatibility. So one of the issues in the Denver area is the fact that we don't have that many DMR repeaters. There's a few. Denver Radio Club has one, for example. But I would say you could probably count them on one hand. Whereas other cities you go to, they're everywhere. So it kind of depends on the city more than anything. Like Kansas City, for example, there's DMR repeaters everywhere out there. Here in Denver, Yaesu seems to be a lot more popular in terms of the digital repeaters. Like there's one just right up here on Mount Morrison. So a lot of folks, rather than trying to hit a repeater, will get a hotspot. And that's a whole nother topic, and which there's a recording up on our website on hotspots if you want to watch that. Popular use cases. So local and regional repeater communications, again, because it's all digital, it's very clear. You can talk worldwide, like that talk group I just put on the microphone a minute ago. That's the worldwide frequency or channel rather. So you can talk to people anywhere on that. It's kind of fun. Emergency communications, public service, obviously they use that very heavily. There's lots of also experimental digital modes and network that people are doing with it. Ooh, the dark side. Okay, I should mention these microphones we're using are analog VHF. So if anybody has a radio and you key up, you'll probably blow me off the air. So please don't do that. Okay. The dark side of DMR and amateur radio. So the number one issue that people run into is it's hard, or it seems like it's hard because there's just lots of terms and lots of little things you got to configure, right? And if you get one thing wrong, nothing works. So I'm going to try to lead you through that a little bit and make that a little bit clearer to you. D-Star is a close second. You might even argue it's even harder because of all the reflectors and things on the back end of D-Star. And as I mentioned, YSF or Yaesu is easiest by a mile. You literally just put in the repeater, you hit a button and it pulls up all the talk groups, you pick the one you want and off you go. Okay, radio manufacturers. So one of the biggest problems is people will go out and they'll buy a Baofeng. This is what happened to me. I bought that Baofeng and I installed their CPS, which stands for code plug software. A code plug is another one of those really weird terms. People go, what the heck is a code plug? All it is a combination. It's kind of like a virtual plug, you know, to make things work. So inside of that is all the things that you need to make that DMR conversation happen. Right. So if you ever hear that term, like you'll see some code plugs published, like RM Ham publishes code plugs for a bunch of different radios just to make it easier. So you install the manufacturer's CPS, code plug software, and then you connect your phone or your radio rather, and then you have to go through and either load a code plug that someone else has created or punch in your own. And it is not easy. I mean, I'm a technical guy. I've been in technology for over 40 years. It took me a week to get it working. So that's why one of the reasons why I'm doing this is I want to make it easier for everybody. If you are buying a radio, there is a nonprofit open source group called OpenGD77. They're at opengd77.org, and they produce open source firmware for radios and the code plug software designed for hams. So they support a lot of them. The Baofeng's Radioddity Mixes series. I have the GD77, which is now deprecated. There's like a 78 or something they make. And if you want to go the HT route, go that way. Pick a radio that is supported by OpenGD77, put that on the radio, install their software. You're going to be so much better for it. Issue 2, as I just talked about, is the lack of repeaters in a lot of locations. So, you know, I won't belabor that too much. But of course, you can solve that with a hotspot, you know, like, an open spot or one of those. I have 3 hotspots running in my house for each one of the 3 major protocols, and they're all based on Pi-Star, which is open source. And again, all this causes a lot of hams to give up on DMR. All right, so let's talk about DroidStar. So a little bit of history. Pi-Star was designed by a group of folks, I think, out of Australia, New Zealand to begin with. It's open source, and they designed it originally to be used for hotspots. So a hotspot is just a little microcontroller, microcomputer, typically running Linux, that has software running on it that bridges the connection between a DMR radio and the internet. Right, so the radio talks to the Raspberry Pi, which has a little antenna on it, you know, with the, they call it it's like a plug-in board. Sometimes it's called a hat, and that just sits on top of the Raspberry Pi. That receives the incoming DMR, typically in UHF, converts it to the internet protocol required and sends it off to wherever it needs to go. So that's what Pi-Star is. Well, DroidStar is a software version of Pi-Star married to a radio equivalent that all runs in a single app on your phone. So that's what DroidStar is. It's free. It's available for Android. You can run it on iOS, although I've got a minute. I'll talk about in a second about that. All the flavors of Linux. It also runs on Windows. So you don't just have to have a phone to do this. You can do this on your Windows laptop or your Mac if you want to. It evolved from a previous app called DudeStar. I don't know why you called it DudeStar, but anyway, maybe you thought DroidStar was better. From the name, though, you might guess that came out for Android first, right? That's why it's called DroidStar. It's just, I talked about how it's a hotspot and radio all in one already. Oh, did you start recording? Okay. Sorry, I keep thinking of these things. Uses, everybody know, you probably know what a vocoder is. Vocoder is another one of those weird terms. And basically, it's a voice decoder. That's what that stands for. It's a piece of software that converts your voice into a standard set of bits. Okay. And so it uses a software vocoder. The older radios and things had a chip that did that, which prevented you from being able to run things like DMR on a phone, right? Because you'd have to plug something into it to do that. All right. So this one has a software vocoder. We'll get back to that in a minute. That's usually the trickiest part of installing that. Supports all kinds of modes, not just DMR. So you can run All-Star on it. You can do D-Star, M17, you can do NXDM, which is another one of those kind of off protocols that not a lot of people use, P25 and YSF. So even though you can get started with DMR, you can also use it to get on Yaesu and all the other protocols as well. It as I mentioned, they support iOS, which is the Apple, the iPhone operating system. However, you have to side load it because sorry, guy that developed Droid Star. I always talk too loud. The guy that developed Droid Star didn't want to pay the money to become a part of the Apple developer community, which costs $100 a year, and then you have to pay more to get it certified and things, right? So rather than go through all of that, he created it, and you can use a little utility. So side loading basically will load it in without having to go through the App Store. So I haven't tried this. It is theoretically possible, but I haven't heard of a lot of people that have been successful on that. So obviously for mobile support, Android's highly recommended. That's what I do. I mean, I have an iPhone, and so it just sits in my pocket, and I use this cheap Android phone, which we'll get to in a second. Okay, so how do I get on DMR in 20 minutes? Well, I've already talked for about 20 minutes. I'm not on DMR yet, but anyway, for $40 or less. Okay, so there should be an asterisk there. There's a couple of things that are going to prevent you from doing it in just 20 minutes. And that is, first thing you have to do, if you don't already have one, you have to go to radioid.net and register for a DMR ID. It's free. You just give them your call sign, and sometimes it's quick, sometimes it can take a day. They'll email you a typically 7 or 8 digit DMR ID. That's the key thing that you have to have before you go any further with DMR. Once you have that, then if you want to get on Brandmeister, you go to the Brandmeister website and you register for a free Brandmeister account. Same kind of thing. You just put in your call sign and your DMR ID, and they approve you, and then you're good to go. Once you've gotten past 1 and 2, you can do the rest of this literally in about 20 minutes. Okay, if you don't have an Android phone, and it will run on virtually every Android phone I've run into, you can do what I did. I went over to Best Buy, and this is a remarkably good phone. This is a Samsung Galaxy A15 that I got for $39. It's a prepaid phone, so you don't have to sign up for an airtime plan. You can, obviously, if you want to, but you just sign up with your Google account. I think everybody's probably got a Gmail account by this point. If you don't, you sign up for a free Gmail account. You configure, you can get in and just turn it on, put it on your Wi-Fi, and you're ready to install DroidStar. All right, moving right along. Yeah, this is a great little phone. It's got 64 gig of memory in it. It supports 5G. If I didn't already have an iPhone and be baked into the Apple ecosystem, I would totally use this as my primary phone. Set up the phone using a free Google account. I just talked about that. You don't have to have an airtime plan at all unless you want to, use it mobile, obviously without a Wi-Fi connection. Install DroidStar. That's available on the Google Play Store. Very simple. And then you go to configuration. So that's where we'll go next. Okay, so here's the 20-minute part. So we're assuming now you've got a DMR ID, you've got a Brandmeister account, okay, which again can take a day or two. You got a phone, and you've set it up with your Gmail account, and you've got it on your Wi-Fi. Okay, so then you basically download the app and start it. And I've got screenshots coming up that show this too. I'll put this deck up on our website too with all these instructions. So you put in your call sign, your DMR ID, you put in your Brandmeister password, which is one of the things you do when you create your Brandmeister account. And then this is the trickiest part of all, number 3 there. So entering this URL to download the vocoder plugin for your device. I'll show you this on the screen in a second. But basically there's a screen in there, or a field where you just type that in, and then you hit load vocoder, and it goes out to this website, loads the plugin, and you're good to go. This is what took me the longest to figure out, because I couldn't figure out where to find this. So this is going to help you guys a lot because you already have it here for you. Then you just literally click a couple buttons to download the latest list of hosts. Hosts are all the other DMR IDs that exist in the world.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, sir.
That website is non-existent.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay. This, I don't know if you're trying to, this is an underscore under here, so I don't know. But yeah, it should actually try it. Yeah, let me just click on it. Yeah, there's a link in here. Yeah, it doesn't support secure, so you just hit continue. There it is. Yeah, so it's. Yeah, it is. Oops. Okay. Yeah, it'd be easier to download the deck and just copy and paste. Or be able to see it in plain text rather than on the screen here, but yeah. Yeah, it's where he doesn't have a SSL, it's not encrypted, but the phone doesn't care. You just type it in exactly like that. So you click a couple of buttons to update the latest files. You select DMR mode. Again, I'll take you through each one of those screens in a second here and show you all the nuances of that. You select which host you want to talk to. So Brandmeister has, I don't know, 20 or 30 hosts that are all over the world. And I always use the 3103, which is here in Colorado. So it's the closest one, but you can pick it up, it doesn't really matter. Now, let's talk about talk groups. As I mentioned, a talk group is like a channel, and they are grouped by either geography or by interest. So like 91 is the most active. That is the worldwide talk group. So if you connect to that, you'll hear people chattering from Slovenia and Japan and New Zealand or wherever. So, and you can talk to them. It's really fun. There's also regional ones for the US, North America. You know, every country has one. Every state pretty much has one, plus all the clubs. And there's also all kinds of special interest groups that also have them. So like, as I mentioned, our club has our own talk group as well. Thanks. Okay, so you just enter the talk group that you want, and then you hit connect, and you'll start to hear audio. If you want to test, there's a couple ways to test it, which I'll talk about in a second here, where you can talk to yourself, which is kind of fun to do. I do it all the time. And yeah, that's called parrot, you know, so literally you can make a call and talk, you know, and then it'll come back to you, so you can just test that it's working. All right, so hopefully you can see this, but this is what the main screen looks like from the phone, right? So you've got tabs on the top, main, settings, log, hosts. Let's move this window out of the way here. That over there, okay. Okay, and about. All right, so main is what we're looking at right now. So let me just take you through these various things. First thing here is the mode DMR. So obviously, if you're going to do DMR, you want to select DMR. You can also select YSF and all the other modes right there. The time slot, you don't have to worry about with DroidStar. If you are on a repeater or on hotspot, remember I told you there's two slots, time slot 1 and 2. So when you're connecting to a repeater, you have to know which time slot you want to connect to. DroidStar doesn't care, so you can just leave that. I think it defaults to slot 2. Color code's the same thing. So with DMR, there's a time slot, and then within the time slot, there's a thing called the color code, which is irrelevant for ham radio. It was used in public safety, like one color code would be for command and another color code for something else. It's kind of like a CTCSS code, you know, that we use on FM for repeaters. Again, don't worry about that for DroidStar. And then there's a button that says connect, disconnect. Obviously, this one's already been connected. So it just toggles on and off. This has your Brandmeister server. So that's the one I just mentioned. So you just pull down the list and pick one. And I suggest you use 3103 because it's the closest. Let's talk about private call. So private call, there's two ways of communicating on DMR. Private call is designed to go point to point. So like John and I do this sometimes. John has a DMR ID. I have a DMR ID. We both have hotspots. So I can literally just put his DMR ID in, click private call, and I can call him direct. That's kind of fun, you know, like it's kind of like a simplex call, right? But if you're talking to a Brandmeister, you don't want it to be right. You want it to be unchecked. If you want to use the parrot as our time, so you talk to yourself, that's also a private call. Here's the top group ID. Now, the only thing I don't like about, actually hate about DroidStar is the fact that it does not have memory for channels. So you can't select favorites or have a list. You have to type it in every time. So I just have a little cheat sheet with all the things that I like to use. So as I mentioned, 91 is the worldwide talk group. You can find the entire list on the Brandmeister website if you want. I'm not going to go through what these all mean because it doesn't matter. Just make sure they're all checked. This is your microphone gain. Just like on a regular radio, you can move it up and down. If somebody tells you you're overmodulating or whatever, you can back it down. I find that usually all the way up works just fine. Now this shows the QSO that's underway, that's being received. So in this case, this is this guy N1EGT. This is his DMR ID. Excuse me. That's the top group. Don't worry about the gateway ID. And again, this is just info you don't need to worry about. This will always down here in the bottom. Don't freak out about this. This just means there's no hardware devices plugged into it, which is good because you don't want any hardware plugged into it. And then if you want to key up and talk, you just press the TX button. It's by default, it's set as a switch. So you just press it and it's push to talk is on. You can talk, you press it again and it goes off. You can set it if you want to make it like a real push to talk as well. That's a configuration option. Okay, next we're going to move to the settings tab. So as I mentioned, this is the toughest part really. So just do what I have in here and you'll get it running nothing flat. So you pick software vocoder and just, these are all defaults. So just leave those the same. If you want, like if you have like two Bluetooth devices attached to your phone, you can tell it which one to use for microphone and for playback, but otherwise you'll just use whatever the default is. You put in your call sign there, you put in your DMR ID, which again you get from radioid.net. This one is if you have a multiple, if you're a hotspot person, you need to differentiate DroidStar from all of your other hotspots. So if you have a hotspot, you probably already know what this is, but just pick a number that's high and you should be fine. It doesn't really matter what you put in there. Thanks, John. And then your Brandmeister password. If you're signed up for TGIF, you put that in there. If you want to, you can put in your latitude, longitude, location. That stuff will all just go into the Brandmeister log when you key up. You can also optionally put in your QRZ URL, and that's about it. Then on screen two, this is actually just scrolling up a little bit. So again, here's the stuff that was already in there. These are the two things you want to click down the bottom. Don't do this until you put this vocoder in here, but that's where you put that URL in there that I just showed you. And you click download, click these two things, and then connect. You hit connect on that first screen there. And to make sure that it's working, you can click on log here and you should see that it connected. And it will show you exactly how it connected. And as you start receiving things, you'll see things in the log. You don't need to worry about hosts. That's an advanced thing that nobody I know uses. And then about just shows you the versions. So, all right. So troubleshooting, again, look at the log file first. It's good to try a private call to pair it. You just put 9990 in for the top group, click the private thing, and you can talk to yourself all day long if you want. For fun. There's also a test talk group 98, which is specifically for people that are new to DMR and just testing radios. Right. So you just go on there and say, hey, K0EHR, I just got this new thing and radio check. Anybody out there? You know, and some other newbie will come back hopefully and say, yeah, I hear you. The biggest thing I ran into, and I've installed it probably 6 times now, is this vocoder not being properly installed. So just make sure you have the URL typed in correctly and you should be good to go. It's not a bad idea once you make a change to just close the app and restart it. That way it reloads a fresh version of everything. And then here's a whole bunch of useful sites. One of them is here in Colorado. And a bunch of really, really good guys in there. And here's a list of top groups that I like to use. I already talked about Radio Test. 93 is the North American group. It's also fairly active. There's 2 parrots, actually. There's this one and also the 9990, either one's fine. Here's our 285 club top group, which is primarily only used for the Tuesday night TechNet, but you know, I tend to monitor it with my radio, so you know, you can always put a shout out, see if somebody's monitoring it. SkyHub Link has their own top group here. Denver Radio Club has one. Sorry, Jerry didn't put it on there, but anyway, Colorado. If there's severe weather going on, you know, the guys on SkyHub that do like Gary and those guys that do all the severe weather stuff, this is a great way to tune in to see. Because sometimes they don't bridge it over to SkyHub, but they're always on the severe weather net. So yeah, if there's tornadic activity, lightning, whatever, that's a really cool place to monitor. Colorado HD has their own DMR, and then there's a nationwide 3100 there too. And one last thing you can do, it's kind of fun. There's a website called Hose, like Hose Line, I guess. And Brandmeister puts that on. So you just type on that, it'll show you all the active top groups. You can click on whichever one looks interesting and you'll hear it on, you can listen to it on your computer. So another good way to test. So if you hear something on Hose, but you're not hearing it on your phone or radio, then something's not. Right, that's it. Any questions? We got 60 seconds. Yes, sir. What's that?
Work on hotspot.
No, yeah, with Droid Star, you just need a phone. The other question was, will it only work with a hotspot? And yeah, actually, you don't need a hotspot at all, and it won't work with one at all. Yeah, you just put it on a computer too. But, yep, this is everything right here. Yeah, you literally just put it in, you hit connect. And if I want to talk to this guy, I hit the transmit button. Off we go. Yeah, I'll have this available too if anybody wants to play with it. Yeah, Corey.
Quick question, if you could clarify the BM pass and TGIF pass, how do they correlate to? Cause I know I need to put in a Brandmeister ID and password.
Yeah, so the question was the DM path. Let me back up here. Is it? Yeah, these two passwords. So when you create your Brandmeister account, you'll create a password for the account. And there may be, I think it's a separate password, but basically there's a tab on the left that says self-care. You click on that. And yeah, actually, I think you do. You put a second password in there and that's what you put in here.
So if I'm not mistaken, they call one a Brandmeister password, the other one hotspot password possibly.
Yeah. So maybe, yeah, did I repeat the question? I don't think I did. So the question was, what do you put in here? And so, yeah, there's two passwords within Brandmeister. There's one when you create the account, and then when you go down to, and there's a hotspot password, that's what you want to put in here.
In both fields or the?
Just for Brandmeister, you just put it in there. TGIF is the separate network. And so you would set that up on TGIF. I think it's tgif.net. We'll set that up.
Okay.
Okay, one more.
Do you
Yep.
get internet access for that or not?
Yes, you have to have internet access. Yep.
So you just get your phone like.
Yeah, so if you have an Android phone with a data plan, it'll work anywhere. If you have one and you're too cheap like me and I don't want to pay for an airtime plan, I just put it on Wi-Fi. Good. All right, that's good. Thanks everybody. I'll be around too if you have any more questions you want to play with this or whatever.